Wow.
Okay, so let's start, guys. Hello everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to the panel discussion on how to start up in college. We have with us Mr. Hussain Habib, who is co-founder and CMO of Hats Off Digital Private Limited, as our moderator for today's session, and he's going to take us through this wonderful journey of how to start up in college with three of our wonderful speakers. Now I request Mr. Habib to take on this session.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Prakhar. Hi, Saurabh. Hi, Harsh. Hi, Ashley. How are you guys doing? So our topic today is how to start up from college specifically. That's always been buzzing around. Should I start post college? Should I start during college? Should I gain some experience? Should I go for a stable job, or should I partner along with my job? So there is a lot of ambiguous amongst the millennials and the young minds what to do and not to do. So we've always seen starting young, starting fast, starting collaborating with people at a young age, and building up a value proposition for people across, maybe for the people whom you partner with, the venture capitalists whom you associate, or the customers what you're offering. So that young mind can blow up pretty much. So we have today with us Saurabh, Harsh, and Ashley, who've been doing pretty well. I've been going through all their portal sites, apps also together. So quick introduction from Saurabh, Harsh, and Ashley, and then I can put questions to you all. That would be great. Yes, Saurabh, we can start with you.
Sen, just a second. If you can have your camera on before we start.
Oh, my camera on.
Yes, the option on your top.
Option on the top. Wait. Top left, right?
Yes.
Yes, take it. Yes. So guys, starting from Saurabh, if we can have a quick introductory from you, who you are, what you've been doing, and later I can throw questions to each of you all. Yes, Saurabh.
Yeah. Hi, this is Saurabh. So I'm co-founder of Tamasha.live. So it's a live game show platform where creators can go live, they can host their game shows, and users can come and get entertained and earn money as well. So it's a recent venture we started this year, and before that, so I've been a part of eSell community as well. So I was marketing manager. So I've been attached with the entire eSell community since after my graduation. So I graduated in 2017, and so far it's been 3 years, and I've seen both startup and corporate in these years. So yeah. So
Great. Yes, Ashley, to you.
Thanks, Hussain. Hi, folks. My name is Ashray. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Replace.ai. I was in IIT Bombay Elect Dual from 2011 to 2016. Right out of college, I started my first startup, which was Soundrex. I did that till 2019. And in early 2019 is when we started Replace. So we've been building generative AI tools for video creation for the last 18-20 months. Happy to chat about the journey. Looking forward to the questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, Harsh, to you.
Thanks, Hussain. Hey guys, my name is Harsh. I'm IIT Bombay, graduated in 2010, Hostel 3, Metallurgical Engineering, Material Science. After IIT for a couple of years, worked in consulting, and for the last 8 years, I've been one of the founders at a company called Find. We build technology for retailers to help them everything from their store customer engagement to e-commerce on their websites and third-party marketplaces as well. It's been a good 8-year journey. Hopefully another 8 years in front of me.
Wonderful. So everybody is going to be across on the digital space some way or the other, focused towards the internet. We hope we see some next Zuckerberg coming out from you all also. So Saurabh, to you, how do you get that motivation to start up inside the college? What was that factor which held you on your toes that you want to start out of college, you want to build something, you want to build some wow proposition for people. So what was that factors which helped you across? Yes, Saurabh.
So I think one of the core factor, pushed me to start something while in college was the ESL. So I was part of the ESL since my second in the college, and I met a lot of founders, while in my college. So I remember an instance where I met Bhavish Agarwal in my second year. I was an organizer there, and I think 30 people came into the event. He was telling that, hi, I am starting this, some, CAF surveys or something like that. And, working on this project. And so he was, telling about Ola at that point of time. And, and getting back to 2 years later, when I was in fourth year, and Ola became big, suddenly. And Bhavish was invited as, in our auditorium, the main auditorium. And there was 2,000 people, who were there sitting inside the auditorium, and there were 100 more people standing, waiting for to get into the auditorium. So I've seen the journey, how simply people start, working on a small, solving a small problem, and eventually how things, work out over the years. So got pretty much inspired with that. And and started something in my final year. Instead of going for an internship or during my summer, started a solar company while in college.
Okay.
So I think ESL played a lot of role there, and also meeting a lot of founders, listening to their story. So I also realized that there is nothing to lose basically while you're in college, so you can easily start things.
So Harsh, to you, so when you plan to start from college, were there certain motivation factors from people, or were you from a family business background, or what was that factor from your side, which held you across?
So I think I don't think there was a master plan of sorts. I think it just sort of ended up happening. Yes, I am from a business background. Family has been in business for quite some time, but I think my I just found myself in the right place at the right time with the right people. I was also part of ESL, and that definitely gave me a lot of exposure towards the startup ecosystem. And for me, starting up in college was a happy coincidence of an internship, which with an incubator, which automatically sort of resulted in a startup being found just before my fourth year. So I think for me, I think there was always something that I wanted to do. I don't think there was a master plan of doing it so early, but it was just so circumstantial that chance mila to fir kar liya.
Chance mila to kar liya. That's great. To grab the opportunity, that's the most important part. To Ashley, to you, apart from being across in college events, etc., was there that motivation factors from peers, from your friends, from maybe like Bhavish Agarwal would turn up at, or any startup funded company would turn up at the event where you feel like, okay, I want to be there somewhere, Was that one of your factor also to start, or is it that you were just intending to solve a problem where you solve there is a loophole and then you want to come across?
So I think I had a slightly different journey that in my final year, I wanted to do something really cool before I passed out of college. And we then started to make wristband speakers of certain sorts. We did some events in PCSA, and then we did it in Convo. And although it had its hiccups, the project went really well. After that, because we had nothing to lose, we signed up for a couple of competitions that are conducted by ESL. So we signed up for Eureka, 10 Minute Million, which were the flagship competitions of eSummit. And we happened to be runners up of Eureka, and we won the grant in 10 Minute Million. That was a very big coincidence for us because we weren't even a company then. We were just a bunch of people sitting in rooms and trying to build something happen. And that was a very big validation for us that, this idea has potential beyond this. And so also had a job. When I decided to leave my job offer and continue the startup journey, we had some really strong people backing us. We had won some really amazing competitions and had some conversations. So for me, back then it was just about the idea. until they date, it's still primarily about trying to solve the problem. Entrepreneurship right now happens to be the way of solving that, but I am not so hell-bent on being an entrepreneur per se. I'm more than happy to solve the problem in any manner that I can. Right now, this happens to be just the most effective way for me to solve the problem.
So when you say you want to solve the problem, definitely that entrepreneurship tinge has to come across. You need to scale up that business, to reach out to people across. So is that a way which you think that having that skill of being an entrepreneur should be an value addition to you?
I think when you're passionate to solve a particular problem, the other adjacent skills automatically, it's much easier to learn. For example, as of today, I am passionate about trying to solve the problem of video creation.
Okay.
I used to be the convener of a film club in IIT Bombay. I've made a ton of short films. I realized how difficult video creation is. We have a really strong AI background. We want to make video creation really, really simple. Now, on top of that, you of course learn minor things over time, like how do you do sales, how do you do marketing, how do you scale up a team, how do you build a certain kind of structure. Those are things that you can build up on over time, but the core still remains the same. That we want to democratize video creation. We want to make video creation really, really simple. So till date, that's the thing that drives me, and I think that drives a bunch of people in the company.
Okay. Saurabh, to you, capital plays a very important role in any business. It's also the idea which is the important part, but you get funded from friends, families, and fools, right? So what were the hiccups that you faced across, when you start pitching to investors or to venture capitalists, or what were the hiccups you find across? Yes.
So I think capital, is a problem, but it depends on what kind of problem you're solving. So when I started in college, I started with an investment of $100, 100 rupees, and where I invested that $100 is getting 100 visiting cards. Okay, and my logo, branding, everything written there, and says Saurabh Gupta, Zarvi Technologies. Then what I did is I basically called up, all the solar companies. So basically I was very excited about solar at that point of time. Was hearing, reading about it a lot. So I said that I want to start something in this, but I don't know what I want to start. So firstly I named my company, and I bought 100 visiting cards and called up all the CEOs, there in Mumbai. That hi, this is Saurabh, and I want to do some kind of partnership with you, something like that. And a lot of them, they responded very happily. I told them my background, IIT Bombay and all, and met all of them. And when I met them, they basically, taught me a lot of things. So when I went there, I said that, I want to know what you are doing and stuff like that. And they told me a lot of things, that this is how, our business model works. This is how, we do stuff. And basically, after that, I understood that this is one problem that we can solve, like setting up basically making people aware of that how solar works, and and selling them that how they can save electricity and stuff like that. So gathering all the knowledge from those people, I started giving my knowledge back to the possible buyers. So I started going to multiple societies around my college, and pitched them the idea. And fortunately, one client, he got excited, and then I brought a system integrator who was actually expert in that, and I did one project collaboratively with him. So I learned the entire process, and similarly, step by step, I started removing that what are the pieces which can be directly done by me, and where this guy is not required. So this is also in my entire journey. So my first profit I made, using that, I registered my company, right? And after that, the second profit that I made, I got an office, outside my college, and said it was small team. So it's not compulsory that capital is something which is always necessary. When you're building a tech company, you need to find some good people, who are talented, who can build stuff, right? So especially for technology products and all, you can create a small quick prototype and test it among few people, and then eventually, I think right now the kind of ecosystem which is there, inside IIT Bombay, the access to investors and everything is there. I think all the other things, automatically happens.
Okay. So sort of the journey seems very exciting and very interesting. What you've been going across, you learn a lot of things from the day you start, from the day you progress, and by the end of the year, you've seen the difference where you come across. So Harsh, to you, if for example, if you were to give a few ideas and thought in terms of investor relations with to startups particularly. So maybe if Ashley says like, I have an idea, but how do I go across to an investor? Who are these investors? If you can give the young millennials a little bit of guidance, that would be great in part of your journey also.
So I think very simply put, I think it's fairly easy these days to find an investor for your idea. I think your first investors are essentially, the 3 Fs that they say, right? It's either friends, families, or fools. But even sort of outside of that as well, I think your seniors and people who have already been there, through that journey, become some of the most earliest investors in your idea. For all 3 of us, we've got ex-IIT Bombay alumni who are actually backers of our companies at a very early stage as well, right? I think the simple thing is that as an entrepreneur, you don't need to be afraid or get an inferior complex of talking to someone about your idea, and that's just what it is. So just feel free, reach out to people, go on LinkedIn and just write to people saying, hey, I want to talk to you about your idea, or find a friend who can connect you to someone who is potentially investing. And that becomes the easiest way of doing it. But I think at an early stage in India today, I don't think there's any lack of capital for entrepreneurs who are working on a good idea. Even if it's a bad idea in a good market, money still comes. So don't worry about judging your idea too soon. I think just be authentic and be absolutely open about the problem you want to solve, and money is very easily available.
Money is easily available, right? So a good team can build up a bad product or a good product, but a bad team can screw up a good product in a bad way. So team is really important, the people whom you're getting associated. So Ashley, to you, in terms of when we talk about investors coming across, so do you seem that investors should only pump in money and leave out at a particular period, or do they have to also be as mentors also to you?
Just to continue Harsh's point of that money is easily available. The follow up to that is, if money is easily available, you then start to categorize money into different buckets, and then you try to get the smartest money out there that you can possibly get your hands on. And the reason that's important is because in the journey of a company, there are many times you have to make really hard decisions. When it's like, I am writing off 50% of my revenue because I just don't think that this business is going to scale. Or, I'm going to let go of some really important people in my team, which I had sold to my investors just like a few months back. And you need to have really smart investors who understand these things. Ideally, people who've either seen many such events happening earlier, or who've run companies themselves, so that they can develop some level of empathy to what you're doing and support your decisions in most cases, and still continue to ask you the right decisions to make sure that things are good for the company and hence for you.
I read, Saurabh, I read a few articles, about should we start a company with partners, or should we start alone, or should we start with professionals? So what are your thoughts on these pointers? How do you associate with people, with the right people to envision your product or business?
So I think definitely, companies can't be made alone. You definitely, even if you don't have a co-founder, you need right set of people who can work for you, right? So firstly, you have to see that the problem which you are solving, do you have all kind of expertise that is required to solve that? So you might be good at one thing, right? You might not be good at all. So firstly, you have to identify that what are the various key pieces that are required, for to solve this problem. And then accordingly, you have to see that how can I get those get those things done. So so that's how you basically look for co-founders or possible employees. So if you think that this kind of a problem is something which requires a co-founder, like who should be as dedicated or as important in the company, then you look for a co-founder. or else you work out things by yourself initially, and then look for good key employees. But overall, company is something which is it's totally about the key people who are there in your company. So it's if you don't have a good team, but if you have a bad idea, if you have a good idea, you won't succeed. But if you have a bad idea but a good team, possibly they will pivot, keep on pivoting, and eventually might turn up building something really nice, really cool.
Nice.
So there are a lot of examples out there. Snapdeal, eventually was a totally different idea, and all the companies are like that. Who eventually became big, started with some different idea with a good team, and eventually they became big.
Right. So, Harsh, to you, I was going through your platform. Just hello.
Yes, Hussain, we can hear you.
Hello. Yeah. Saurabh, my question to you again over here is, okay, I went to your platform, Tamasha. I mean, since you mentioned about gamification, gaming with people, why do you envision an influencer working with or having a game partner to a normal person? Why do you get an influencer particularly?
Okay, so telling about a bit about my product. So it's basically, it's so right now there is a entire creator economy that is evolving, right? So a lot of people. So influencer is not, So there was a time when influencer used to be people who are television celebrity or Bollywood stars or sports persons or something like that. So usually you must have seen that a lot of people who have millions of following on social media were someone who are famous at some place as their own genre, and then people follow them. But right now, over the last couple of years, after the TikTok and all such kind of platforms coming up, there are a lot of people and influencers and creators who are coming up who are using their spare time to basically show off their skills and put it out in the world, right? So right now it has become so simple. So take an example of YouTube. So YouTube was popular among only creators were only those people who are good at editing, who are good in creating content. But with TikTok, the kind of tools and creator modules and everything is there. Anyone can create content, right? And just a click of a button, right? So right now it's possible for a person like me. So if I have a talent, like I can make my thumb touch my hand, right? So I can show it on a live video, and I can show off my skill. So there is another creator economy which is coming up, and you have to give them right tools to basically engage their audience and as well as monetize them, right?
So influencers play a part of your role that where a particular person is skill set, and I look up to that person, and maybe whatever he's associated or she's associated, I might buy the product or might identify a similarity with the influencer also. Right. That's a very interesting thing what you've been doing, Saurabh. So Harsh, most important part is the failure part, that the failure. So you might not succeed every time, you might see a lot of struggles across, things are not happening as per the envisioning, team is not coping up better, or you're not getting your targets appropriate. So how do you cope up with that, and what is the advice to people around here? Yes,
I think failure is a very wrong term to be used. I think yes, things don't go according to what you hope, what you plan or hope or expect. I think what is important is that there needs to be an honest assessment of what has happened. I think based on that assessment, I think the team needs to just learn what needs to be done the next time around, and as long as you're not sort of repeating the same mistakes again. See, just because something didn't pan out in the right way doesn't mean that what you did was wrong. It's just that given what information you had at the time, that was probably the best decision that you had to make anyways. So I think failure as such is going to happen. I think I don't think any startup in the world ever is only successful at whatever they do. The idea is to try multiple things, focus on actually amplifying what has worked, focus on learning from what hasn't worked, and sort of use that to try out new things as well.
Try out new things as well. Yes. So Ashay, to you, when you say you always focus about saying you want to solve the problem, you want to come up with something wow. So in terms of scaling up, what are the associations or fringes that you see? This is the way which I can excel to scale up my revenue business across. So if you could share some thoughts on it, Ashay.
I think for most of the audience, scaling up is a fairly far-fetched goal right now. Also, scaling up is something that will happen automatically as soon as you hit a certain level of product market fit. So, in terms of optimizations, you're always optimizing for PMF and not directly for scale. In fact, I would ask most of the people listening to this to just ignore almost everything they hear about scale and then just solve the problems right now in any way they can. Right? Like pick up the most non-scalable method you can think of. Just solve the problem that you believe will add value to other people and see if it actually adds value at the end or not. Because in early stages, most companies go through an extremely unscalable way of doing things one after the other. But to answer your question directly about scale, I think as soon as you have a certain level of PMF in place, you like in our case, we have a fair bit of inbound interest coming in. So since you have that interest, that becomes a big problem that you want to solve, and that's when you start to create processes to manage, your sales pipeline and your market and since that's happening, you see that, hey, I did this one thing, now this works. How do I double down and how do I do this more on a more continuous and a more reliable basis? That's when you build a marketing team. So these things automatically happen with time when you're running a company. Don't optimize for scale from day one. Make sure that your market is scalable. Make sure that your problem is something that a lot of people have, but you don't need to build your solution for scale on day one.
Day one, right? Harsh, to you. I'll just ask a very tricky question to you. See, everybody here has been on the internet and be working on some interesting products on the internet, on the apps, etc. See, suppose a personality comes on television at 8 p.m. at evening and tells the internet is shut in India. So what was your contingency plan?
Oh, okay. I think today, honestly,
everything is possible because I always say, if the demonetization can happen, if the global lockdown can happen, then anything is possible now.
Absolutely,
right? There's all possibility. Absolutely. Yes.
I think what you have to understand is that I think internet and technology are two very different things. I think internet is a mode of sort of distribution. Even if internet doesn't exist, technology will still exist. So no matter what industry you are serving or what customers you're serving, I don't think the need for technology will go away. I can talk about Find specifically, and we work with retailers not just for the e-commerce business but also to power technology in their stores. So I think for us that way I think there is some insulation to if internet goes away. But it's in today's age it's sort of hard to even that technology is actually there's some sort of online component on that technology as well. So it's going to be very hard to actually figure out life without technology without internet, but technology without internet can still work. And I would say that's something that you would focus a lot of your efforts on.
So major key things in your startup, what you've done different from others, what you feel proud of it, this is what you've done for your company or organization. What are the key 3 things that that legacy among the startups should also go? Yes,
I think I don't want to compare that what is different from other companies. I can talk about what are some things which I look back and think that I'm proud of what we've done. I think number one is definitely the fact that it's been 8 years and counting, and we have the same sort of co-founders that have withstood this time, and you come across so many companies who essentially shut down because of sort of team issues, or a lot of companies unfortunately don't make it past the 2, 3, 5 year mark. So I think the fact that we're still a running company 8 years on is something good. Like I said, when I started off, looking forward to the next 80 years for sure. So by no means is the fact that it's been 8 years enough. I think the second thing is that I think at Find, and I hear this across the startup ecosystem as well, is that we've developed a fairly good open technology-driven culture. A lot of what we do internally is openly shared on our blogs. Everything from our pitch deck to our investors to how how we take decisions, to our sort of hiring methodology. Everything is sort of very, very openly shared, and that's something which I keep hearing from a lot of people in the ecosystem. That's that they've also gotten a lot of value out of what we've showcased at Find. Which is a huge testament to not just the culture, but also the whole team believing in that, and actually taking time out of work to make that write those sort of blogs and sort of make themselves open to the world. And I think the third thing would be returning or actually making money for our investors. At the end of the day, of course, the startup needs capital to grow. A lot of investors had put their money and their sort of support behind us, and I think it feels good to actually give all of them a fairly good return. I would say these are the three things. And I mean, given the fact that there have been very few sort of cash exits in India, I mean, it's been far more numerous in recent times, but I mean, even there, I would say pretty much still double-digit cash returns only in India. And I think being one of those companies definitely is a proud moment for all of us.
So Harsh, you mentioned 3 points over here. One is to create a legacy from 8 years to 80 years, what you want to envision for yourself. Second is you mentioned about a transparency about your organization. And the third part is simple, every business is looking out for an ROI, either for the entrepreneurs or for the investors, etc.
Yep.
Yes. Saurabh, to you, what 3 things you feel like, that this is the kind of work, that you feel good about it, 3 factors in your organization. And any startup, should think of, replicating or maybe being identical or be similar thoughts also. Yes, Saurabh.
So for me, firstly, building a company, it's about people, the people and the culture that we build. So, the last company where I was, so I was doing a job and working there, and that entire team that I built was like a family, was something which, I was really proud about. This is a team, that I built, and the kind of relationships that you build, while building a company, while building a team, they last forever. So you have to be firstly very, very transparent, to your people with whom you are working, and the kind of team you are building, and the kind of and should be able to communicate the vision, so that every day that when they go to work, they should be as motivated as you are. So if you are doing that successfully, then so I think this is something which is very important for me and for the company which I'm building as a culture, that everyone in the company should be as much inclined and as much motivated around the vision and about why they're building. They should not be working just for living their life or just like that. So this is one thing which is which I feel is very critical. The second thing, which I feel is that the kind of problem that we are solving, or the kind of impact that we are creating, is very, very critical to me. That it should, reach out to as many people as possible, right? So even in Tamasha, the form of entertainment that we are, building, we want that, it should not be restricted to just few people. It should be built for masses. It should be for as many people as possible. So this is something. So I always wanted to work on something where I can build something that is for masses, for I can reach as many people as possible. So there's the second thing, and the third thing is that even your company, if it does good, or if it does so when you're building something, when you're trying to solve a problem, you are so the thought behind solving the problem is very genuine, right? It comes from your heart that this is something which you are building. This is something so that should stay the same. So there are a lot of distractions in the founder in a journey of a founder, right? There is a lot of investment that goes in. There are a lot of things that comes up, and so you get distracted easily, right? So let's say some investors come in and they say that you bring this feature or something like this in a product, and it will work out really well because a lot of companies are doing that. So I think this thing is very important and very critical for us, that the core vision which you started from day one, when you're 3 people sitting in a room, and the core problem that you wanted to solve, it should remain same, even if if you grow, so that you don't get distracted with a lot of clutter that goes around you. So these are the 3 things for me that are very.
So Saurav, you mentioned 3 things. One is, to the X factor, the motivation factor, to the people, to employees, to investors, to your co-founders, what is important, where people look up to join the organization or continue the status quo along with you. The second part is you mentioned about ROE, return on engagement. And the third thing is you mentioned about, solving an issue, a problem, which is the key factor. Ashay, to you, what were the 3 things for your side, which builds an edge over others?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing that we're super proud of is the team that we've built. We're trying to build one of the best AI teams in the entire country, because the problem that we're solving isn't, say, to make a concept happen that's happened somewhere else in India. We're trying to actually create a new technology and take that technology to market, which is a super challenging thing, and hence we hire from, of course, the best colleges in India, but also some of the best colleges in the US to make sure that we're able to make that happen. Second is that we're actually super proud of the unique problem that we're solving, and sometimes you look back and think that if X would not have happened, like if you would have not done this, the world would have looked different. And we genuinely believe the same thing about videos. If we don't make the AI technology happen to make videos as simple as writing text, then video creation 5 years down the line will look very different. So sometimes you think that you're a part of a larger goal, and that's something that motivates us. And the fact that we're making this change happen is something that we're very proud of.
Right.
Third is that I think one of the very hard decisions that we took as a company is to go from a horizontal platform to being a very vertical sales and marketing specific focused platform, which required us to say a lot of no's. And one thing that we learned, is much more harder than you would expect. It is just to say no to a few things. It's very easy to say, I will do this and this and this and this, but it's a lot more difficult to say, like I'm saying no to 90% of the things. I'll only do this, and because you sometimes have that element of fear that what if this does not work out? I actually said no to things that would have possibly made it work out. But to be able to take that concrete step that I am taking this hard decision to be able to get a certain level of focus and build an amazing product is super interesting. Actually, for everybody in the audience, I would want to double down on Harsh's point. The content that Find has put out over these past few years is just amazing. You guys should have a look at it.
Just simply go to blog.gofind.com, and if nothing, you can reach out to me, and happy to share. I think honestly, guys, the reason we did that is when we were building out, and this is 2012 onwards, there was hardly any material that we could find about how companies are built in India, and all the blogs we came across were how companies are built in the US. And people say that it's similar. Yes, it is similar, but no one told us how to do it. And we would call up friends, we would call up seniors, so whether it was Bhavesh or whether it was Kunal from Snapdeal or anyone else, and they would tell us, but there was no sort of content available anywhere. So we thought, let's just write it.
Wonderful, interesting thoughts. I mean, the kind of collaborations which come across, where you look up to, like how you said about Kunal or you said about Bhavesh, you at times look up to such entrepreneurs, who build up a wow product, who solved a problem, who've taken it at a next level, and you also envision, some way or the other, you might be at that status. So, Saurabh, to you. Now, post-COVID, things have changed. Mindsets have changed. What are the frictions you've observed during this COVID? Because always a business has to have a contingency. Has to have an alternative. I mean, this time, if you've seen is like Ludo, people started playing a lot. Started people who couldn't access. You weren't using games started accessing more games, started using internet more. Your internet access has increased across, technology access has increased. People were sitting at home for 6 months, 8 months. So what is the opportunity do you find here as a business?
So I think firstly, during the COVID, fortunately, I did not face any, inside or, problems because of it, because the kind of space I am into. So definitely, I think from the positive side, there were a lot of things that became simpler. So firstly, the kind of efficiency that came in the entire, work process. So initially, there was a time, so the kind of industry I belong to, media entertainment, people usually don't do Zoom call. People, always right, something like that. So when last year I was, working, in a company, मेरा एक आधे घंटे का meeting होता था. I used to, have to book a flight, bring 3 people along with me, and do that half an hour meeting, and the entire day used to go in that. आज के time पे, I found my entire, team. I have never met them, right? My investors, I have never, most of the investors, I have never met them. But everything, was possible, and people have, become okay with that, right? At one point of time, like they said, they said कि यार चलो सामने वाला है वो आ ही जाएगा, मतलब उसका काम है, so they will come. But right now, they know that this is the only option. They adopted to it, and I don't think कि COVID एक बार चला जाएगा तो चीजें एकदम बदल जाएंगी. Now, since people have find, easier way to do things, so I think in all the spaces, मतलब हर industry के अंदर चीजें efficiency की तरफ, जा रही हैं, and I think कि कोई भी सेक्टर उठा लो, you can find lot of interesting, startups, to create out of it. So I think that definitely, कोई भी एक बड़ा इवेंट होता है, चाहे वो demonetization हुआ था, तो उससे बहुत सारे लोग पेटीएम पर आ गए थे, सब्जी वाले, all kind of people, and ऐसा नहीं हो कि वो सब लोग कैश आने के बाद चले गए, they are still on Paytm, right? तो ऐसे ही I think that this event has definitely, जो भी एक scenario temporary लेके आए हैं, but there has been a change in the psychology of and behavior of people, right? तो वो बना रहेगा, and not all the people will go back to their own previous zone. So I think definitely काफी सारी opportunities.
So Harsh, to you, during these COVID times, people always think about, suddenly this appeared, and we thought like, okay, this lockdown would only be for a few weeks, like how bird flu was at one point of time, SARS was there, it was only for a few weeks, we didn't expect it would go so long. But after a few weeks or few months, did you think that you need to build up some alternative plans for your business? Did you think that these are the value additions you see, that this can build up more business for me? So
I think before I answer that question, I'm just looking at the latest poll. Clearly most of the audience is unmarried out here. That's why I can see the answer sort of reflecting that. But anyways, I think on a light note, but I think see, when this all started, of course, all of us thought that it'll be a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month lockdown, and it just kept getting extended over and over again. I think initially we did think whether there was any opportunity that we could sort of take advantage of, thanks to the situation. So, for example, we do a lot of work with retail, but within retail also we hardly do any work with grocery. So we thought groceries are the only segment of retail which is allowed to sort of stay open. Historically, there's a reason why we didn't do grocery, and that's why we sort of stayed away from it. It being low ticket size, low unit economics, etc. But we gave it a thought, and we decided that none of those reasons have changed. So we decided not to sort of get into grocery from an opportunistic perspective also. There are many companies, I mean, a few that I've also invested in, who did take, a very opportunistic view and said that, no, listen, let's just move everything online. Let's just try this thing. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it. I think I believe we took the right decision. I think there were underlying assumptions that were validated, because of which we decided not to do something in the past. I think as long as those assumptions still hold true, we will continue not doing it. If something changes, then we will start doing that. So for example, at Find, we were focused more towards building taking brands to the marketplaces like the Mintras and the Amazons and the Flipkarts of the world, and less focused at creating the brand's own website. But I think with COVID, a lot of brands sort of saw a large opportunity of driving traffic to their own websites as well. And that's where, we sort of took a pause and said, let's sort of double down on the website building piece as well. So yes, there were some things that were sort of, taken opportunistically. But I think, I think as a founder, what you need to understand is, go back to the assumptions because of which either you are doing something or not doing something. And, only if those things change, do you start doing something in COVID. I think for us, we're happy we stayed away from groceries. But we're also happy that we did take the decision to double down on the brand websites as well.
So you added a certain value additions to your customers, but you focused on your business model throughout. Yes. So Ashley, to you, if, for example, if you were to give an advice, to take a certain company on step-by-step wise, in terms of idea, investment, or team, what are the few things that you would always observe? These are the puzzles first needs to be initially solved, and these are the few next steps a founder or a startup needs to take.
The way I always think of it is just, people tend to overcomplicate it a lot. It's like, you should not make, creating a startup as this like big, huge problem statement to do. It's honestly very simple. You think that there's a problem out there in the world, you go out and solve it. It's honestly just that. If you're able to find co-founders on the journey, good, right? If not, I would not make it a bottleneck to start off, because maybe that can happen later when you are at a certain better stage. So the way I would and the way I've always mentored people to do is, if you think there's a problem that you can solve, try to validate that as soon as possible. So try to come with the most basic MVP which you can develop yourself, or you can ask your best friend to make for you, or you just the easiest thing that you can do, and try to deploy it out there in the world and see actual customer feedback when you're solving the problem. Everything else will fall into line if you just focus that this is the only thing that you need to do. Now, if things go well, this is not the only thing you will be doing for the next 2 years, and you'll be doing a ton of other things. But this is honestly what you should keep it focused on for much longer than you think, because everything else will fall into place automatically.
Right. So we'll come across with a few questions now. We've got tons and tons of questions from across people. So I'm just scouting, a few ones. So I have a question from Hari Narayan, and I will pass this question to Saurabh. Okay. During initial years, how do you get money to sustain your livelihood? Can we use initial funding for personal purposes?
Can we use initial funding for?
Personal purposes.
Okay. So this is about what stage? It's a funded startup or?
This is the only question that I have, So maybe you can elaborate on your thoughts, maybe. So I'll just repeat the question. During initial years, how do you get money to sustain your livelihood in business? Can we use initial funding for personal purposes?
Got it. So I think, if you are a non-funded startup, I think this is the most possible scenario when you are starting up something, and there is always a period of time, let's say, 8 months to 10 months, when you receive your first round investment. So I think that is a time where a lot of your time is getting spent on validating the idea, getting customer feedback, market research, and all kind of stuff. So there at that point of time, and if you are graduated, like if you are a recent graduate, there is definitely a minimal kind of sustenance which is important for people, right? So I think people can figure out a lot of ways. So they have to firstly see that what is a minimal expense that they need to sustain themselves, and what is the minimal expense they need for the startup, which is something which without which they cannot even do the POC or try out the product. So firstly, firstly they have to definitely think about their own livelihood, right? And I think that is something where where they can actually cut a lot of cost. Like so right now during COVID, I spent 5 months at my hometown, where I did not have to think about my rental expenses or food expenses or something like that, right? And did all my market research and everything virtually, right? Other than that, if you feel that there is a small seed fund which is which you need for even trying out your product or running a product, I think then you can do some you can do some minor gig projects or something like that in free time of yours. So when I was when I started, there was a time when I used to do 1 hour or 2 hour of tutoring at one point of time, while just after my graduation, that were graduating from my college, and I started something. So there are a lot of ways available. So especially for people from IIT Bombay, or they're from IIT Bombay, they already have certain capabilities, or basically knowledge to give it to people and get that minimal expenses work out. And then the second question was that if they can use the fund for their personal expenses, right? The investment fund or something like that, right? So I think when you are a funded company, definitely you can take a minimal amount which is required for your sustenance, and the remaining amount definitely goes building the company. So definitely there is something if you raise investment, so definitely investors or whoever putting money on your product, they definitely think about it, that there is a minimum sustenance that is required for you to build your company, so that you can focus completely on your product. So that is taken care once you raise your investment.
Yes. So, Harsh, to you, we have another question from Aryan. Should you first validate your idea and make a business module, or should you immediately start prototyping?
Of course, you should validate your idea first, honestly, without a doubt. I don't think anyone would not want to do that. I think it's not a trade-off. I think today even building prototypes is super easy. I think there are lots and lots of tools available for you to very quickly build a prototype. Free tools also, so you don't need to invest a lot of money to do it. I think simply validation is most important. But at the end of the day, I think the validation will also be better if you have a prototype with you. So it's like, it's actually a prototype-driven validation, I would say.
Validation, great, wonderful. Ashley, to you, I have another interesting question from Akhil Goenka. So he says that I have heard that to be a good founder and CEO, you inevitably have to be a jerk. You cannot be a nice guy to everyone and have to be shrewd. How true is that? How true is that? We've been so a very simple example. We've been seeing example of Steve Jobs. He was the one who was very shrewd, who was very upfront. He was, he would bash his employees, investors. You see the debacle between the founder of Apple at that time. So how do you see? Is it true that he wants you to know, because you've been a bit across founders, meeting them, talking to them? Yes. What are your thoughts, Ashtray?
Okay. The way I think of it is, in a startup, you should double down on your strengths. You should very well be aware of your weaknesses and just double down on what your strengths personally are. Because if you keep self-doubting yourself on every small thing, you won't be able to make the right decisions that need to be made. So if you're just natively a jerk, I think you should just double down on being a jerk, right? But if you're just natively a nice person, you should not try to convert yourself to being a jerk and think that will help anyone, including yourself or your company. So I don't think being a jerk is required at all, honestly. Over the last 5 years, I've met hundreds of entrepreneurs of all different sorts. I've met some of the nicest people I've met, and I've met a lot of jerks. It's okay. I don't even think that that's a factor that's relevant at all. Like, I don't think it's either good or bad here, because it has its pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
Another point to the Apple example that you were taking,
Huh.
one of the things that I've realized over the last, again, before Rephrase, which is the pure software startup, I was doing a hardware startup. And I would ask like the 120 people here who are listening to this to apply this rule always. Whenever you think of, should I do X? And the only example if you think of is Apple, just do not do it. For whatever reason, Apple is an exception to almost all startup rules that apply everywhere.
Absolutely.
Like, and that's not true for Google, that's not true for Facebook, that's not true for almost any of the companies. Apple, even in terms of like how you should design a hardware, like in literal most sense, Apple will over-engineer the hardware, which is supposed to be the death of 99% of the hardware companies. But Apple just seems to get along by breaking almost all rules that would go in a startup world. They're an exception. Until unless you can find two other companies which match what Apple does, do not apply that as a rule. Like, just don't.
Great. So, Harsh, we have a question for you. I have from Lovish. I have an idea and I'm quite sure it will work out, but I don't know how to proceed further after the ideation stage.
Hey guys, idea means nothing, honestly. If you have an idea, probably another 1,000 people have had the idea in the last week itself. I think, simply put, you need to either validate it or start building a prototype on that idea. I think it's just as simple as that. Having an idea has no meaning. If you want to understand, tactically what are the steps that you should do, I think firstly discuss your idea with some potential customers. Doesn't mean that they have to be super enthused about it, but as long as you have zeroed in correctly on the problem that you're trying to solve of the customer, I think that is a good sign. Followed by start creating a prototype of the same, and then start showing and selling that prototype to others. The third would be, and this is assuming if you don't have co-founders, then try and convince someone else also that your idea is actually good, because that usually helps not just get validation, but also get someone to work with you.
Great. See, in this, I've been attending a lot of webinars across, we've always seen, these aspects of, having pressure from friends, family, or having a very cliche idea. We have social pressure, class pressure across, my family is only doing a job. We cannot do business. We only are focused towards government jobs, etc. So we have one question is, when you come with an idea for a startup, this is from Chaitanya, and don't get good returns and don't go as planned for a couple of years. Being from a middle class family, having social pressure or comes hard on you. So how does he have to handle it? Ashay, to you. So how will Chaitanya handle it? Being he wants to start. He has a lot of pressure across. Yes. So if it doesn't work out, so how does he cope up further?
Thanks, Hussain. I really, really wanted to answer this one. And the reason I wanted to do this, and I have a very controversial stand with this, that startups are honestly not for everyone. I had a really good friend who used to be like my batchmate in college. He was one of the early team members in Rephrase, but since he had a certain family pressure on him that he had to pay to sustain his family, the fact that the ups and downs of a startup become too much for him to sustain, because his parents always are like, हमने तुम्हें IIT में भेजा ताकि उसके बाद हमारी life अच्छी होगी, and like we'll have it comes with expectations.
Yes, definitely.
So startups, there are. So if you're super rich, yes, of course, you can do anything that you want to do in life. But I would say even for a decent amount of a minimum level of how I personally think is, if the startup goes bad, it should affect you. I would say that's the best place to be. It doesn't affect anyone else except you. Should mostly be a decent enough pressure for at least me to take. I'm sure that different people can take different level of stress, but I would say, if you want to do a great startup now and you're not in a great position, it's not as if all of the ideas in the world are going to run out in the next 5 years, the next 10 years. Go out, get a corporate job, build up a decent enough financial base, and then try it out after 5 years. You'll be in a much better position with much better problems to solve because you've been out there. You actually understand how the world works and what it actually needs. So I would not rush to do that. And it's extremely counterintuitive for me as a startup founder to say that not everybody should be a startup founder, but that's just the reality of life that sometimes it can be extremely painful. The startup journey by itself is not a cakewalk. So if you already have problems in life, solve the other problems and then get here. Having said that, the reason I would say it's one of the best paths, if like you say somewhere in the middle tier, is that for you to get exceptional returns in like a fairly short amount of time, startups are a decently good way. Like the outlandishly good outputs can only happen from a startup life, and not say working in a regular job. That's more stable. So it just depends, like, are you willing to go to the peaks and troughs? And if you're not ready, ignore the peer pressure. It's completely fine to not do a startup. It's not as rosy as everybody tells you.
So I'll just give you certain thoughts over here. Since this is a very important question, and this question I will pass it on to Saurabh and Harsh also, because this is I have come to observation is either people don't have the will to start, or they are okay with getting an X amount of pay slip per month, or they don't have that willpower to execute or ideate or get the right people, or they feel demotivated that they've started and they had to leave it out and they had to go to a normal job, etc. I've come across with a lot of people in 9 years. So Harsh, this question is very important for college going guys from IIT, like, and they always in lot of unambiguous thoughts also at times, and there needs to be a holding hand. So with this question, which I asked to Ashray also, I think I'll pass it on to Harsh and Saurabh also. Yes. So how do you handle it?
I think what Ashray said is right. I think first and foremost, yes, you have responsibilities. I don't think you need to earn to live a luxury life, but you need to earn to actually live a comfortable life for you and for your family. You need to sort of set those expectations, or fulfill the expectations that are there. I think honestly I was very lucky that when I was starting up, my family didn't have expectations of me to send money back home. I mean, quite the contrary, they said come stay at home, we'll take care of your food and stuff like that, and you can start your company. So I think that's very, very important. I think for people coming out of IIT, what usually happens is that a few years you might probably take up a job, try repaying the sort of social debt that society has, sort of that you have on society, whether it is your parents, friends, family members, etc., etc. And then as you start building that small amount of capital, and when you start up, you end up raising funding, you definitely take some salary. It's not an exorbitant salary, but that some salary is enough to sort of keep you on the same path of be sending money to your parents and stuff like that. I think the advantage that people from IIT have is actually twofold. One is, I don't think there will ever be a time where you'll find it difficult to find a paying job. I'm not saying a good paying job or a small paying job, but a paying job which can help you sort of learn, help you become less under pressure with respect to finances, at least. The second thing is that if a startup doesn't work out, again, you always have some company to go back to. And I think the third is that given your network and if you're on the right idea, you do get access to capital which can help you pay some salary at least. So I would say, as Ashray said, it's not for everyone. but it can be for everyone at the right stage of life and at the right financial stage.
Yes, very interesting and very emotional, touchy to people who intend to start. Yes, Saurabh, to you.
Yeah, I think both of them have fairly covered everything, and I want to add on that I think I think right now movies and television and series have created a very different kind of perception around startup, that showing them becoming rich. So I was talking to one of my investors recently, and he told me that if you want to have a very high probability of becoming rich, go for a corporate job, right? Because I've seen a lot of IITians, who in 8 to 10 years they become, they get to a director position or pretty good decent position in a company, just if they stay there, right? So if I think money is the main motivation, then would say that go for a corporate job. And if you're doing a startup, then definitely you should be ready for multiple failures and not just one failure. And secondly, get away from the peer pressure, because there would be a lot of friends of yours who are doing some kind of corporate job, getting promoted, getting high, getting cars, getting bungalows and stuff like that. But it's very true that you should be so it comes from within. Yeah, like if you are working at solving a problem, all those things that are around you shouldn't impact you. But if you are not ready for that, and if watching a web series and seeing that you get in 2 years you get funding and become a $5 million company, and so that the ratio is really so how many companies can people count who are unicorns, right? It on your fingers. And how many startups start every year? It's in tens and tens of thousands, right? So get acquainted with the reality, and then only I think we should start something. And if we truly have some a good mission to solve, to work towards to, then I think a lot of those things that are surrounding you, the pressure surrounding you, won't impact you that much.
That's very interesting. So I think I'll put up the last round of question to you all, and that's from my side. Okay, and then we'll wrap it up. So we've always been talking about what a startup should have, should be, should do, should think, be around, etc. There are always should things, but we've never focused on what you should not do. So what are the assets to you, like to a startup or to a person who's ideated, what they shouldn't do actually, from the ideation or from the investors or to building up the team, what they shouldn't do? Yes.
I think there are tons of things that you shouldn't do. I think that's a really long list. But if I just have to summarize it into one point, I would say don't overcomplicate it. It's very, very easy for, especially, when you're an engineer, when you want to think of every single problem very intellectually, make, every problem so complicated in your own brain that, prove or disprove something. Like objectively, for example, when I used to think of, like, say, what value tech, say 5 years back, it's very difficult for you to on paper prove what value does Uber add. Like now it seems honestly silly to even question that. But what value did it add that time? Like the world was functioning well before it, and the world functions after that. And that's just on the idea stage. You can honestly over intellectualize every single question. Like, is this person the right person or not? Is this investor the right investor or not? Or like, what if this happens? Keep it simple. You have a problem sitting there that you want to solve. Build out an MVP. Take it to people. If it's important enough, they'll pay you, and you have a business. And if the market size is large enough, you probably you're on the right trajectory to building a really large startup. It's just that. Anything else and everything else will just fall into place eventually.
Wonderful. Harsh, to you, what about you?
Let me choose something else. I think I think what you should not do is be too much wedded to your idea. I would say be wedded to the problem that you're looking to solve, not too wedded about your solution.
Okay, so up to you. I think this is the last question, and then we can go for a wrap. Yes.
Okay. So what are the don'ts? So I think one of a very critical thing, in a startup is just trusting people, right? Whom you are working with, because I've seen a lot of companies fail, because of trust between co-founders, trust problems between employees and founders. So we have seen that even at a mature stage, it's not like that in a seed stage companies broke. Companies even broke at a series or at a very mature stage. So I think mutual trust is very important. When you are building a company between your co-founders, prospective people, investors, and as well as you. So trust and transparency are very critical things. So I think the don't for for a startup is that not to be non-transparent or untrustworthy. So I played it like that. So
Okay, so I have a few thoughts. Maybe so it's like we think like, okay, to start with this person or to start with that person, will it work? You always validate that person also at times, but you think like at times that what you taking that decision might be wrong, right? You don't know at times also, and it happens. It's a journey. It's an exciting journey. Where it's entrepreneurship business is not something which is objective based, which is very subjective. Anything and everything can happen. There is a possibility which is there. So we've had 100+ audience today. I mean, it was a great session today. I mean, a lot of things were covered. I hope we addressed all your queries, guys. And Ashray, thank you. Harsh, thank you. Saurabh, thank you for your time. We had 1 hour, but we took 1 hour 15 minutes. We took extra time. So I'm sorry, the IT guys, taking that 15 minutes extra from you all. Okay, guys. All right.
Thank you, Sen. Thank you.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Ashray. Bye.
Thanks,
Take care.
Thanks, folks.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.